And we are back, and I'm so excited to have my return guest. She is none other than Miss Sharon Lawrence. She is a licensed clinical social worker, a certified anger management specialist. She is the therapist for therapists, professionals, and couples. She is owner of Selah Wellness, I hope I said it right, and therapeutic services located in Largo, Maryland. Sharon Lawrence, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be
So
here.
excited to have you.
Thank you, Sam.
You were so informative the last time that you were here, and I definitely wanted to invite you back because we know that mental illness is important.
Yes.
And you really focus on self-care with that.
I do.
So talk to us a little bit about your background, and as you say, the therapist for therapists. I love that, by the way.
Yes. So, well, first let me highlight I have on green because May is Mental Health Awareness
Yes,
Month.
it
A
is.
lot of people don't know that, but a lot of people do. But for me, for 17 years, I've been in the field working with children, adults, and families. But for the past 2 years, my focus has been on helping therapists, professionals, and couples really establish how to, improve their self-care and to have better relationships with one another. And so that is now my mission, but my mission always has been to make sure that people are walking in their complete wholeness with life.
I love that. And so, in our local news, and I don't know if it actually went national, but we know that there was I think maybe a psychologist that was
Yes.
pretending to be a psychologist that's been in the news. Are you familiar with that
I'm
at all?
not.
So, and that just leads me to the question of how can people really vet individuals when they are seeking help, because that's at a vulnerable time for individuals. And so this individual was actually going around and it was, I think, a children's psychologist.
Wow.
And so they actually have charged her, and she's been going around, even testified in court, and they found out that basically she was a fraud. And so I just thought it was important for people to know, how can they vet the individuals that they are coming to for help?
One of the things you can do is actually ask them about their background. Start there. Find out what states they're licensed in, because in order to be a psychologist or a licensed professional, such as a mental health counselor or even a social worker, there's always going to be a board that's associated with governing what you do. So once you find out what state that they're actually licensed in, you can actually go to that board's website.
Wow. Okay.
It's public knowledge for anyone. You don't have to call anyone. You can go on and find out when they were licensed, if they're active, or if there's some type of conflict going on with their
Wow, that's
licensure
really
at that
good.
time.
Okay.
And so you can actually vet that way. Another thing is look at reviews and see what people are saying. There's Psychology Today, but there's also Google reviews. We don't often tell people to go there because you may have one person that may
Right.
have had a bad experience, but the reality is that if you have 20 and one is bad, the other 19 may be great, right? And so you want them to be able to say, okay, is this a good person for me? But you can definitely find out if they are who they say they are. I haven't heard of that scenario, but I heard of another incident that I was familiar with where they actually were able to sit for the exam and everything and did not
Yes.
have the degrees. And so that's where the board actually made a mistake and they did not vet the situation.
Okay.
And so you have situations like that that are very unfortunate, but it does happen, but there is a way to vet them.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. And so let's really, as you mentioned, May is Mental Health Month. And I think the last time you were on, we really talked about how more and more people are talking
Yes.
about it.
Yes.
So it's not so much of a negative stigma as it used to be, but we still need a little more help
We do.
with that. Because so many times people who need mental health, other people will say, oh, that person's just crazy, or that's just how they are.
Exactly.
How can individuals that are looking at these people who we feel may need some help, how can they really reach out and help them and make sure that they get some professional help?
I think I mentioned this the last time, is one, being trained in mental health first aid or taking some type of workshops that allow you to understand what signs and symptoms may look like when they are present. Not everyone with a mental health diagnosis is going to necessarily have an outward appearance of symptoms that you would normally see where somebody would use the term crazy or
Right.
they're off their rocker or something, where we don't want them to use those terms, but that's what people have been
That's right.
using to understand what's happening. And so when you notice that there's something going on, step up. and just ask them, hey, is everything okay? Do you need any type of support? Make sure you understand and that you're compassionate about that other person's symptoms and experiences, because not everyone is so kind. So it causes people to end up isolating one and retreating into themselves because they don't want to share with anyone because of the judgment that comes with it. So you have this major stigma associated with the fact that if you do have symptoms or if you have a diagnosis, that there's something wrong with you. One of the things you mentioned is that I'm a therapist for therapists.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of therapists who do come to me, and they're often fearful about the implications of even seeking help. And I'm going, you're making the best step for you, and that's to have courage to figure out how do I take care of me. So this term self-care is what has been helping people make that step. And so if I have to use the term self-care to help them address their mental illness or their symptoms associated with it, I'm going to keep using it because it is the best form of self-care to make sure that your mind is well just as every other part of your body.
Wow. So some of the more common terms for individuals who are going through, such as people who are bipolar or even manic depressed, because we know that people can go in and out of depression.
Right.
Basically. And sometimes what I am finding, some people are not even identifying that they are depressed. So what, again, can individuals who are having some of these symptoms, you know, and I know sleeping a lot is one of those things, and you can share a little more, but what can we do so that people are getting help, so that they can identify what exactly is going on with them?
We're talking about what's happening with them.
With them.
Okay, so paying attention to any changes in your routine. Are you no longer going out with friends? Are you sleeping too much, like you said, or are you not sleeping at all? Is there a change in your appetite? Are you spending too much, or are you not doing anything for yourself? So basically, when there's a drastic change, you got to be able to pay attention and say, okay, I'm not myself. I'm not feeling 100% today. And looking at the frequency, but also how long it's lasting, and being able to say, okay, I think I need to go and speak with somebody. And even if it's not a licensed clinician, maybe talking to a friend first to say, hey, let me run something by you. I don't feel like I'm 100%. Have you noticed anything different with me? Or can I run this by you to see if there's any type of relief from me talking about what's been happening? Because there are people who are suffering in silence because they don't feel like they can share, like I said, out of fear of judgment or misunderstanding. What people don't understand, they either judge or they shy away from. And so we want to help people to feel better or find a safe place to talk about things.
I love that.
Yeah.
So one of the final things that I wanted to talk about was grief, because that's, and I think a lot of times people will seek out when they are overwhelmed with grief. And we also know that grief comes in many ways. We're not even just talking about death.
That's right.
Because we grieve over different things.
Exactly.
And so talking to individuals, and I want to specifically talk about a death of a loved one or a close friend, because that's something that I've experienced most recently. And it did take me talking to someone to help me through that, because I could feel myself going in a spiraling, you know, a way that I'm like, what's going on, you know? And so we don't want people to be taken down by that, because we have to live even through that.
Correct.
So what would be your advice to individuals who are experiencing death that's close to them, be it family members or friends or even colleagues sometimes? What advice would you give to someone going through that?
Allow yourself time to grieve. Don't rush it, and take time to understand what grief is. There are 5 stages, and recently they indicated that there's a 6th stage. I'm still learning about that. But the 5 stages that I'm aware of are the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression, and then the acceptance. And there's no straight path to it, and so you actually can go back and forth through it. And so, but I always tell individuals, allow yourself to grieve. Don't allow anyone to dictate to you when you should stop grieving. What I would say is that when you feel like it's too long and it's now creating a disruption in other areas of your life, then you really need to look at, okay, do I need to go and speak with someone, because I'm not managing this well, and it's causing me to have some trouble adjusting to life without this individual, because you get used to routines. Like I always tell people, my grandmother passed when I was 4, and every now and then I still find myself crying because she's the only one that I remember at that age. age.
Wow.
And so when people say, are you serious? I go, yeah. And I remember her.
Wow.
And so I tell people, even years later, you're talking about 40 years later, I still remember little things about her in that house.
Wow.
And so I tell people that's still part of grieving,
Yes.
but it's a healthy part because I get to remember a time in my life that to me was very significant. So allowing yourself to go through the healthy way actually allows you to keep memories, to create a legacy. You get to do things differently versus going into a state of depression and staying there longer than you should.
I love that. And so your office is actually in Largo, Maryland,
Yes.
which is right here in Prince George's County. How long have you had your practice?
I've had my practice for 2 years now. May 1st made 2 years.
Wow.
And so I'm super excited because it has just branched off into way more than I ever anticipated.
Wow.
But I love each and every one of my clients, but I will say it's very hard work because you're helping people address big issues
Yes.
and traumas and grief
Yes.
and relationship issues, you know, during that time. And so I'm giving 100,000% of myself when I'm there. So yeah, I love what I do.
Well, thank you, Sharon Lawrence.
you.
I tell you, please share how individuals can contact you if they are in need of your services,
Sure.
and how can they follow you on social media? Because I'm sure you give out some wonderful tips throughout
Yes.
your social media.
Yes.
So please share
So
that.
my website is www.mysailorwellness, and I can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at My Sailor Wellness.
Awesome. Sharon Lawrence, definitely you want to connect with her if her services can be a benefit to you. So we're going to take a quick break, but Sharon is going to come back at the end, so you will get to see her again.